Hello everybody. Today in this video we're going to briefly look over loops and iteration in Java. So first let's set up our class. And loops in Java, if you've used other languages before, then it's really similar to how it's done in other languages. Like there are for loops and while loops. If you've coded in other languages, that might sound familiar. But yeah, we'll take a look at how those are written in Java, because if you're moving from another high-level language like Python, you might not know how to do them. So the syntax of a while loop is, while loops are like basically the most basic form of loop. They're like this. So if whatever condition inside these brackets are true, this code will keep on running forever, or not forever, will keep on running while this condition remains true, basically. And you can't have infinite loops by doing this. So since this checks for whether whatever is inside these brackets evaluates to true, then obviously this will always be true and will therefore run forever. So let's check out an example code. So one simple program that you can make with while loops is counting. So basically we can have like a counter. It starts at 1, and then we're gonna have, so while counter is smaller than, let's say 10, then we're going to print it out. Counter. Alright, so let's try compiling this. Alright. I'm more of a Python guy, so I forget semicolons often. So what we see is that this never finishes running, and that's because it's a very common mistake, which is we accidentally created an infinite loop. So to prevent this from happening, we have to actually change counter. So here we're not actually changing the counter, so this will always be smaller than 10, and so it'll always keep running. So how we do that is basically using the ++, which basically increments it. And in case you're wondering, this also decrements it. So adds by 1 or subtracts by 1 and directly modifies it. So let's check this out. And we can see that it counts. And let me just actually take this time. And it runs in 0.3 seconds. That's actually very slow. That might be because I'm recording or because my computer's bad, but anyways, I'm finding that Java is much more chunky than Python. But yeah, anyways, so let's check out another example of a for loop. So let's try counting down. So for counting down, a very simple way to do it, we can do counter not equals 0. And then we can do this. So essentially now we're going to be decrementing at every loop, and we're going to be stopping while if we're at 0. Oops. So let's try running this again. Okay, cool. We can see that it does indeed work as expected. It just starts at 0 and keeps on decrementing every loop until it is 0. But I think we can do this in even fewer lines of code. So we can actually decrement this, because decrementing, well, at least in C++, when you decrement, it also returns like the value. So if you try to evaluate this statement, not only will it like decrement the value itself, not only will it decrement the variable, but it will also like evaluate to the new value of the variable after you decrement it. So I think this should work. At least it does in another. Oh, it does not. So let's not try to do that then. So in another language, you could also, because 0 also evaluates to false in another language, so let's just see if this works. Yeah, so int cannot be converted to Boolean. I'm guessing Java doesn't like support say doing this like C++ does, like, or another language. But anyways, yeah, this is basically how while loops work. Now let's just check out how for loops work briefly. So if you're used to using something like Python, actually I think literally every major language uses this besides Python, but so basically a for loop is structured into 3 clauses. So there's these clauses are separated by semicolons. Now in this first clause is you usually by convention you set up some variables. It's like if you want to set up like a counter variable, you don't want to set it up like outside. Like you don't, by convention, you don't really want to set it up outside the for loop, because they have a really nice property, which is that you can like initialize variables inside of them. So you can, usually people use I. Like if you use it, it's easier to read for yourself and other people. And the second one is basically the condition. So a for loop will basically keep running while this condition remains true. It's really similar to while loops actually, except you can just set up your own counter, except instead of just waiting for, instead of, I guess, so like if you're using like a simple increment or decrement, then a for loop is really handy, because it's just, you don't have to decrement the variable again inside the for loop, right? So the second clause is basically the condition. So for our example, we can just do the thing that we did before, which is counting to 10. And the last one is what you want to do, what you want to execute every loop. And usually, again, by convention, you want to have like an increment or a decrement. In this case, we want an increment. So we can just have, we can just try printing this out now. So let's try this. Alright, so as we can see, it does work as expected, and if we wanted to look exactly as expected, or if we want to count from 1 to 10, we can have it start at 1, and then do, to make it easier to read, we can do not equals 10, I guess. Oh, it actually, so here we can see that as soon as it found this condition to be true, then it just printed it out without going through another iteration of the loop. So I guess we just want to do smaller than or equal. No, it's not that. Or actually, let's try this. So yeah, as soon as we found, so here basically smaller than or equals to also accepts if the value is equal to the value you're comparing it to. So this also remains true when I equals 10, so it'll just go for another loop. So yeah, so this is basically a brief look of how while loops and for loops work in Java. If you've used something like C++ before, you've probably pick it up really fast. But like if you've used Python before, you might need to kind of process how stupidly for loops work. Also, I don't think you can like iterate through like an object in the same sense that, so like for example, you would do something like this in C++. You would do like for I in like something iterable. Right, so I don't think you can do that in Java, but anyways, this is still a really handy thing to have. So another thing I wanted to show is that you can iterate through arrays and also strings. So we can have like an array of integers, for example. So int array equals Alright, so another thing I wanted to show you is iterating through arrays and strings. So basically, normally in like another language like C++ or Python, you could like iterate through each element of the array or each character in the string really easily, but I'm not sure if this is the case in Java. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way, which is with indexing. So let's just try creating an array int So this is like an array of integers. Let's just use something else to make it not that boring. So like this, we would basically traverse the array by indexing by using indexes. So to access an element of the array, we know we can just use square brackets, and this is basically we're changing the index and we're incrementing the index. So like this is a way to kind of simulate going through the array, I guess. So yeah, as we can see, it does print out each element at the specific index that we're trying to access, and you can do this with strings as well, just not as easily. So we can have like a string here. So a bad spelling of hello world. And we would have, so let's make an example program that checks whether or not accounts the amount of uppercase characters. So we can keep track of like a counter inside here, and since the length of the string can change, we want to make this work for any length of the string. So we would simply have str.length. And we also increment the pointer or the index. And with Java, you can't directly access a specific index in the string like you do with arrays, which is kind of annoying, so you have to use substrings. And this is basically like string slicing in C++ or in Python, which is basically taking like a start index and an end index. I'm pretty sure C++ added this, I'm not sure yet. Alright, so and then if we can we can basically check if each individual character is equal to the uppercase of the character. Obviously the uppercase of a string is still like the string itself, and the lowercase of the string would be not equal to the uppercase of the string. So that might sound a little confusing, but it does make sense. Take my word for it. So substring, if this is equal to the uppercase, then we increment the counter. And at the end, we want to print it out. So let's try. So we actually have 4 because of these two characters that don't have an uppercase. So the uppercase of like a comma is still itself. So this still evaluates to true, so the counter is still incremented. So in total, we have 4, which are right here highlighted. Okay, so today we basically had a look at for loops and the while loops, which are both pretty intuitive if you've used another language before. And we also looked at a couple of example programs of iterating through arrays and iterating through strings. So hope you've enjoyed. Goodbye.